Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at SUNY Canton. We believe that it is a citizen's right and responsibility to vote and to do so knowledgeably, so we're very glad that all of you could join us here and learn more about our candidates. I'm Lenore Vanderzee, the Executive Director for University Relations. I will be moderating the debate, meaning I'll be helping things go smoothly and efficiently, both for our panelists and our candidate guests. I'll introduce you to the panelists here tonight, representing 3 forms of media: print, radio, and television. Tom Grazier is the St. Lawrence County editor for Northern New York newspapers and the Watertown Daily Times. Originally from Plattsburgh, Mr. Grazier has spent 33 years in newsrooms in North Carolina, Ohio, and here in New York. He currently lives in Canton, and his daughter is a freshman here at SUNY Canton. Welcome, Tom. David Summerstein. David Summerstein is Assistant News Director and Reporter for North Country Public Radio. He has reported in the region for almost 20 years and recently launched a podcast with fellow reporters at NCPR, North Country in the House, to help our region's voters learn more about the candidates for Congress in New York's 21st District. Welcome, David. Welcome, Keith. We are delighted to have such esteemed journalists with us here tonight. Now I'd like to introduce you to the 2 candidates for the New York State Assembly 116th District, also known as the River District. Addie A. Jenne is the Democratic 5-term member of the New York State Assembly. Ms. Jenne is an attorney by training and formerly practiced law in Watertown. She served on the Jefferson County Board of Legislators prior to being elected to the Assembly. She has also served as president and past president of the Jefferson County branch of the American Association. She received a BA in political science with a Greek and Roman civilization minor, magna cum laude, from SUNY University at Albany, and a JD with a certificate in family law and social policy from Syracuse University School of Law. She was admitted to practice law in New York in 2004. Ms. Jenne currently resides in D-Theresa and is a mother to son Aaron and daughter Cora. Welcome, Ms. Jenne. Mark Walczyk is the Republican challenger here tonight. He's served on the Watertown City Council since 2015. He has also worked for State Senator Patty Ritchie, who is here with us tonight. Very nice to have you here, Senator. Spending 2 years as her legislative director and the last 4.5 years as her district director. Also, for the last 6 years, Mr. Walczyk has served this country as a commissioned officer in the United States Army Reserve. He has earned the rank of first lieutenant and has completed basic training, officer candidate school, engineer basic officer leadership course, sapper leadership course, airborne, and air assault schools. For the last 2 years, Mark has served as the company commander in charge of the 135 service men and women of the 366th Engineer Company based out of Canton. Mr. Walczyk is a member of the Watertown Noontime Rotary Club, the Jefferson County Animal Cruelty Task Force, the NRA, the American Legion Post 61, the Italian American Civil Association, the Jefferson County Historical Society, Friends of the Mack Nature Center, and the Friends of Thompson Park. Mr. Walczyk also attended SUNY University at Albany, graduating in 2007 with a bachelor's degree in history and double minors in political science and education. As an Eagle Scout in the Hiawatha Seaway Council, Mr. Walczyk has a great love for fishing and the outdoors. He has completed 4 full Ironman triathlons. Mr. Walczyk currently resides in Watertown. Welcome, Mr. Walczyk. Excited for the debate. Now I'll speak for just a bit about tonight's format. We will start with 3-minute opening statements from each candidate. Dr. Zafran, the president here at the college, will flip a coin. Heads, Ms. Jenne will begin. Tails, Mr. Walczyk will begin. Then each of our panelists will have the opportunity to ask 2 questions each. The candidate to whom the question is addressed will have 2 minutes to answer, and the other candidate will be given a 1-minute rebuttal time. If time allows, each panelist will be able to ask 1 follow-up question, with each candidate given 1 minute to answer. After the panelists ask their questions, I will ask 2 questions from the audience following the same format. I've got a faculty member and a staff member representing different political parties vetting these questions so that we don't duplicate the questions and answers that have already been addressed. Finally, the candidates will be given the opportunity for a 2-minute closing statement. The candidate who went second for the opening statement will go first for the closing statement. I will be holding the candidates strictly to their time limits, so I apologize in advance for interrupting, but that will help things run smoothly. We have a timekeeper in the front row who will let you know the time, and when about 30 seconds is left in your opportunity to answer, he'll hold it higher so you can see it. And like I said, I'll be holding each of those time limits. Now for the coin toss.
Heads.
Without further ado, let's begin. Ms. Jenne.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank SUNY Canton for hosting this event and understanding how important it is for us to exercise our civic duty. Thank you. And also to our panelists from the local media. Thank you very much for coming this evening. And also to all of you that are here with us in Canton and those that are watching on the live stream. Thank you for joining us. As many of you may already know, I am the 7th generation of my family to call the North Country home. I am raising my kids right here as well. I know firsthand the struggles we face here, and I think that gives me a leg up when we're crafting laws and when we're setting budget priorities at the state capitol. I truly understand what our families go through on a regular basis. I know our strengths here too, and I was raised with a can-do attitude. We weren't allowed to say can't in my house. I'm not afraid to tackle our tough problems either. Neglecting people or problems wasn't how I was raised. I come from farmers and teachers, highly skilled trades workers and entrepreneurs. I understand our economy, and I'm working to strengthen it every day, in spite of the failed economic policies and programs and the approaches that are coming out of Albany these days. I work with our communities individually to help them create the communities that they want to have for generations to come. I'm working with those up and down the lake, all the way up the river to the locks, on re-envisioning our maritime economy, looking at what we have for infrastructure, what we can use in the future, and also working to ensure that our young people, both those in school and those recently graduated, have the skills they need to support their families, and not just for a couple months, but for the whole year. I'm very active in energy policy. We generate a lot of electricity in this area of the state, and it is one of the things I work hardest on, is to ensure that we have safe and appropriate generation of everything from our hydro dams to windmills and solar. I've also worked hard to support our agriculture industry here. Our farmers need our help more now than ever. I've created a successful farm-to-school pilot that helps those raising fruits and vegetables in our area, and I am leading in the discussion to solve the perennial problem that our dairy farmers face, and that is a constant cycle of oversupply that leads to low prices. Agriculture has always been the corner of our economy here, and our farmers oftentimes get overlooked because they are proud people that go to work every day and work hard. Those are the types of people that I fight for, the people that get up every day and work hard to support their families. And I'm here tonight to tell you that I want to go back and keep doing it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk?
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity. I think there's a couple of questions that I want you to ask yourself up front, and also want you to leave this room asking. Are you better off in northern New York after the last 10 years of having Addie Jenne as your assemblywoman? Or do you want to try something new? Would you like to put some new blood in there and try a new course in Albany? Do you want to continue on with Albany's business as usual? Or do you want some new blood and some new energy in there? So we've talked a little bit about my resume up front. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Appreciate the panelists. I'm really looking forward to the questions. I grew up in the Hiawatha Seaway Council as a Boy Scout, became an Eagle Scout, and learned about service early on. And that was service to my family and service to my community as well. in Senator Ritchie's office, and I was fortunate enough to work there for 8 years. I learned about service to the region and getting into the Albany red tape and bureaucracy and serving your constituents, both on the individual level and fighting for small businesses that are trying to put jobs in our community. As a leader in the Army Reserve, I had the fortunate opportunity, actually the Army Reserve Center that's right across the street here on Main Street, to command 135 excellent combat engineers, men and women of uniform, who volunteer in their backyard in a volunteer army and drill with us on the weekends. We got some great individuals here in the North Country. And on the City Council, I learned about what it means to serve your community directly, what it means to take down a telephone pole that's been sitting there for 15 years, or to fix a pothole in somebody's road that they drive over every day, or how to talk about trash pickup or sidewalk repair. I've never had a handout in my life. I've always worked hard, and that's the type of assemblyman you'll get in me. There is absolutely no substitute for hard work. I believe that government exists to protect our freedoms and not to restrict them. I'm really looking forward to the questions this evening, and there's some other things that I want you to think about as we have this conversation tonight. Think about the way that the Assemblywoman and I answer these questions, and think about the relationship that you would like to have with your government in New York State. I think that's going to be very key for voters, because I think there's some key differences between us. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. I would ask the audience to hold their applause from now until the end of the debate. Thank you very much. We will begin with questions in the order in which I introduce the panelists. Mr. Grazier.
I'll start with a question for Assemblywoman Jenne. Despite strident objections from municipalities across the state, there has not been any progress on reducing unfunded state mandates to take up more and more of our local government's budgets. How will you address the issue of unfunded mandates?
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that there are many things that we put in place for the safety of our community. And so there's always a careful balancing act to ensure that we have public safety and accountability. Having said that, I think that it is time to start making some serious changes that can impact our local governments. There are changes that we can make, particularly in how we approach our healthcare system. That could be a tremendous boon for especially our counties here. I think it's important that we move away from the way in which we provide health care in our country. I can only work at the state level, but I think it's very important that we move away from the property tax-based way in which we pay for programs like Medicaid, and have them paid for in a more appropriate fashion that calls on those that are very wealthy among us to support these types of programs in a larger way. There are proposals for the state to take over the Medicaid program and take it away from the counties. And I think we should be having those bold discussions that will save our property taxpayers, and also have those among us that are in much better financial shape share their portion of the burden. That has been a hallmark of what I have done in the State Assembly. I have supported reducing taxes on our middle class, capping property taxes in this state, bringing in additional resources to fund our schools, and I think it's time to take that next step to save us money in health care and save our taxpayers from having to carry that burden. So that's one of those big unfunded mandates that I think we ought to take a stab at. And as a member of the Assembly majority, I know that I will have a large role in shaping what happens so that our rural voices can be heard. And we can ensure that whatever system is created is fair and equitable and allows us access to quality care.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk?
So New York State's budget is roughly $160 billion, and that for me is a difficult number to wrap my head around. And that's probably because most European countries have a budget that's about the European average for a country. It's enormous, but as if that's not enough, New York State forces mandates down on the local municipalities and doesn't fund them. That's why we call them unfunded mandates. Those local governments, and I know I've been there for a few years on the Watertown City Council. We feel it. We feel the squeeze of the mandates from Albany and then turning to our tax base. And I think the 2% tax cap is critically important. I think local governments need to watch their spending and need to be looking out for you, because as we know in Northern New York, we can't look for more revenues here. There's no more to be had. People are moving out of Northern New York. You can't possibly look to them for more taxes. And I'd support putting the tax cap permanently. But what that needs to be coupled with is relief on those unfunded mandates. So the Senate back in the day, they sent a bill over to the Assembly with a bunch of unfunded mandates that came from the local municipalities. They were entirely stripped out of the bill, and it was a no-go when we sent it to the House. And you know, some have said, well, every mandate on the local government has an advocate, and that's probably true, right? Albany doesn't just think of them out of thin air; they come from somewhere. But the problem is, New York City is the advocate for these unfunded mandates that are coming to you. You know, a bailout kit for a fire department because of a tragic fire in New York City doesn't necessarily mean that your local volunteer fire department has the same issues as a large fire truck in New York City is going to have. So we need that mandate reduction, absolutely, and we got to do it in a very real way. That's an excellent point.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. I believe the rebuttal was 2 minutes, so for the next question, we will also allow 2 minutes for the answer and 2 minutes for the rebuttal. To keep things fair, then we'll go to the 2-1 format. Thank you very much. Mr. Summerstein.
Good evening. Thanks to both of you for sharing the stage and talking publicly about the issues. Really appreciate it. This is a question for Mr. Walczyk. The confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court has further increased attention to abortion rights. Governor Cuomo and many Democrats have said that they'll continue to push for passage of the Reproductive Health Act. That would codify Roe v. Wade as law in New York State. The next legislature next year will also likely consider bills on access to contraception and maternity health. How would you vote on those bills?
Yeah, look, I'm pro-life, but I think you nailed it. The tensions are very high in this country right now. And what I want to say is we need to, as leaders, relieve those tensions. I think there's actually a lot of similarities when you consider the Me Too movement, when you consider feminists, and when you consider social conservatives. They're all looking for the same thing here, and that is that we train our young men to respect women in this nation. I think that is critically important, and yeah, you're absolutely right. We need to lessen those tensions. We need to move away from our political tribalism, the red states and the blue states. We need to be red, white, and blue states at the end of the day. So that is certainly something. I mean, women's health overall is very important. Some of these issues can be divisive and nuanced, but there's my position.
Thank you. Ms. Jenne.
Yes, thank you. Well, I absolutely believe that a woman has the right to choose what goes on with her body, especially when her health is at the central core of that decision. I have been a co-sponsor of the Reproductive Health Act in the New York State Assembly for several years. And when I was chair of the Assembly's Task Force on Women's Issues, at the time the governor first proposed codifying it, I went around the state and was able to meet with so many people that have been impacted by this issue. And it really does matter in our communities, even here in the North Country. Access to health care, I believe, is a right, and attempts to roll back the rights that we have in this country and in this state need to be stopped. I will once again vote in favor of a woman's right to choose if I'm reelected to the New York State Assembly. I also have a history of supporting women's issues, and family issues for that matter, from updating our paid family leave in this state to make it reflect more of what goes on in our communities and in our families and what they need to get their family off to a strong start. I have been a strong supporter of laws that get at domestic violence and protecting the victim and making sure there is a process and that there is help for someone that needs to escape violence. I've also been a leader on issues like sexual assault. I am the candidate, as my opponent talked about earlier, that you can come to to talk about what has gone on, the services that you need. I will be there to help ensure that you get them and support you as you recover from whatever has happened. I am there to support you and your family to grow and prosper. I am the one you can come to and talk to about your personal issues, and you know that I will be there to support you and find the resources that you need, man or woman.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Benjamin.
Keep this one simple. Just what can state government do to aid dairy farmers? And if you could, in your response, try to address both the issues of milk prices, farm labor, exports, and taxes. And you can ask them to remind you if you forget one of those.
You have an excellent tone for keeping it simple.
So that's to me, right, for 2 minutes? Is that, who goes first? Okay. I am very active in the area of dairy policy because it is the cornerstone of our economy, as I referenced in my opening. I descend from dairy farmers, hundreds of years of dairy farmers, and while I didn't grow up on a dairy farm, there weren't any shortages around. Nowadays, I have to think about which ones are still operating, and that is a very disturbing situation for the North Country. Our dairy farms produce a lot of spin-off jobs, so it's extremely important for us to take this issue seriously. Dairy farmers are pretty much the one industry where they ship their milk and they don't know what they're going to get paid for it until later on in the month when they get their milk check. Dairy farmers are also caught in a situation where they're incentivized almost to oversupply, and then that drives their prices down. I have proposed a bold solution. It's not a heavy-handed solution. It's one that allows farmers to take back control over their production instead of having other influences like their banks or their co-ops interfering. I have proposed the creation of a floor price of $18 per hundredweight, so long as the farmer meets quality targets. I've also built into that program a calculation of the base that a farmer produces to ensure that there isn't a runaway increase in production when prices come back up. I believe that increasing our quality measures will help our export markets by allowing us to compete equally with European Union products and taxes. The best way to address taxes is to grow our economy. We need more opportunity here. Having strong farms that can support our economy and other spin-off ventures is what we need. Our agriculture sector is broken, and we need to put in common sense measures to stabilize it.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk.
All right, so in 1 minute, I think there was a really key answer there. And like I said up front, you got to pay attention to stuff like this, because I think whenever you hear Albany politicians talk about, new taxes and new revenues and the way to get them, that should be a red flag in your mind. You should think, wait a minute, why do they need more taxes? The candidate just told me they have a $160 billion budget. Isn't spending the problem? The Assembly proposed an additional $1.9 billion in spending just this last year. But I do want to answer that about, I don't have a silver bullet solution for dairy farms. I think it's critically important to listen to the dairy industry. Is this a 1 minute rebuttal or a 2 minute?
It's 1 minute.
Okay. But I think the key is to listen first. There are some ways that we can help fight through the regulation. Dairy farmers are business owners. They have a lot of the same issues that many do. I think opening trade, some of the recent things that have happened with open trade are going to be great for our dairy farmers.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. Mr. Grady, your turn again.
Okay, back to Mr. Walczyk. Nothing gets closer to home for voters, taxpayers, and every other resident of New York than public schools. They're a big part of our tax bills, and more importantly, a big part of our communities. What needs to be done to keep schools strong for students and communities and also affordable for taxpayers?
Yeah, so first up, I think the teachers that I'm talking to feel like Albany has picked on them a little bit. I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, and I probably don't remember. actually there was a hand that I shook in this room today that said, oh yeah, I met you at the parade, and it's difficult to remember the 10,000 hands that I've shook this summer. But I can tell you what Mr. Labrizzi told me in my 11th grade English composition class, because our teachers in our communities, the good ones, have a tremendous amount of impact on our lives moving forward, and they need to be applauded for that. I know we're not doing applause until the end, but I certainly would give a hand to our teachers. They certainly deserve it. Albany's focus, and the focus has been in New York City and the big 5 city school districts. So you see areas where, in years where Albany's had tough budget years, right, and they're looking for new revenues or new ways to save, they save that on the back of the taxpayers here in northern New York. What do? They created the gap elimination adjustment, or the GEA, as you might have heard. My opponent voted for it. It was one of the first things that she did in the assembly. And, you know, I know New York State was in a tough budget year, but at the same time, what it did is unequally, it actually usurped the court-ordered funding stream for state aid and unequally disparaged poor and rural school districts. And I've heard leaders in the assembly explain this away. The Speaker of the Assembly at the time, Sheldon Silver, saying, well, you don't have to worry about those upstate school districts because they can levy a property tax to fix their problem. Well, ask a school board member anywhere in this district if they think they can raise property taxes 50% in their school district. The answer is no. No new taxes, no new revenues in Albany speak.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. Ms. Jenne?
Sure. You know, my opponent talks about understanding how to budget things, and you know, that we have a problem with spending. The fact is, when I took office, we were right in the middle of the largest recession in our country's history. I have a record of making the tough decisions when they need to be made. We had to make a lot of cuts to balance the budget, something I don't believe my opponent has done. His work on City Council has been to draw down reserves and not make the tough decisions. I don't have faith that he'll be able to make the tough decisions for our communities if faced with it in the New York State Assembly. I'll tell you, one of the things our teachers felt that they were taken out of the equation, and I helped to make the change in New York State by personally recruiting Beverly Oderkirk to be a member of the Board of Regents representing our area. She has made tremendous strides working with her colleagues around the state to turn around what's been going on in our education community. She has done a tremendous job, and it was me who was pivotal in making that change in New York State. I've also brought record.
Ms. Jenne,
yes.
your time is up.
Yeah.
Mr. Summerson.
This is a question from Ms. Jenne. There's been a year of flooding and a year of low in Ontario since plan rather than nature for both those high levels and those low levels. The plan was developed and vetted over 15 years by dozens of scientists. The International Joint Commission stands by it. Do you trust the IJC and Plan 2014?
Well, first I will start by saying that we had record rainfalls last year. We had rainfalls at a time of year that made it difficult for the plan to address. Having said that, we didn't have that situation this year. And after a very thorough discussion, I had representatives from the IJC. It has become very apparent to me that there are some flaws in how they managed water levels this year. I believe that the way they managed it this year was contrary to what the plan called for. The plan called for natural flows and natural levels. And I believe this year, political pressure was put on the organization that led them to make decisions that were very unnatural and treated the St. Lawrence River like it was an industrial water canal instead of a living river. I made that case to those folks. They admitted to me that they used the data from last year to make all of their decisions this year. That's a problem. They should have used average data over several years. You certainly shouldn't base your plan on outlier data, a year when we had record flooding. I have been very clear that I believe that they should adjust that part of their management plan and make sure that the political pressure that comes from the wealthier part of the state does not trump what we all were sold on, and that this plan was going to be more natural. We have seen the opposite, and that is unacceptable, and I will continue to fight for my constituents that both have to put up with extreme flooding and extreme lows. There should be some middle ground, and we should, at the very minimum, get an August where people can put their boats in the water and get them out. That is the lifeblood of the economy in this river district, and I will continue to fight for our fair treatment.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk.
Yeah, if you think about things going on, and I want to talk about Plan 2014, this great computer algorithm that they came up with for more natural flows, if you will. But if you think about the River District, it's gorgeous. And you think about the Southern Riviera for the Canadians, and it's basically their front yard to America. And we love to go over there for Chinese food or for a night out or maybe a weekend. It's wonderful. But in New York State, it's like Albany is treating us like we're the backyard of New York State. This is where you store some equipment that's discarded. And I think Plan 2014 is a good example of that. I'm hopeful for the future. We got a new nominee in Jane Corwin, who's a legislator that sort of understands the upstate New York versus New York City opportunity here. And I'm hopeful that we'll see it turn around and that Plan 2014 is again sustainable for our multi-year tourism here.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. I would like to let you know for a last call, if anybody has questions for the candidates that they would like to write down, please let our folks know and they will get you a card and a pen to write those. So last call for that. Mr. Bennett.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about Governor Cuomo's regional economic development programs. They have resulted in regular capital investments, cash infusions for the North Country. Some of them sizable, such as Watertown with the $10 million that you'll probably have a hand in deciding how they use that. Proponents say they feel an important gap in private investment, but actually both of you have expressed quite a bit of skepticism about these programs. And, so much skepticism, I have to ask, what would you replace them with? Or would you just do away with them entirely? What's your viewpoint on this?
Is this one for me? Excellent. Scrapping. Picking winners and losers is not the right thing to do for politicians with your taxpayer dollars. It's proven to breed corruption in Albany, and I hate to see Plattsburgh pitted against Watertown, pitted against Ogdensburg, pitted against Canton, pitted against Potsdam. Pick the best projects. If you're going to do a program like this, pick the best projects based on their merit, not on their political connections, not on who's looking the best for the ribbon cutting in my re-election. That's the wrong direction for economic development, and it's proven failed time and time again in Northern New York. I do want to hit something on my record that was stated real quickly, though. We've actually increased the fund balance and put Watertown at a better fiscal situation since I've started on council. I fought against 2 budgets and voted against 2 budgets that increased taxes over the tax cap, and we were able to stay under it this year, and I'm very proud of the bare-knuckle budgeting that we did on that. But on the economic proposals here, look, small businesses are the backbone of Northern New York's economy. I'm proud to say that I got endorsed by the Business Council and the NFIB, and that's not just because I filled out their questionnaire and I answered I'm along their lines. It's because my opponent has scored very poorly with those organizations. You need somebody that's pro-business in Northern New York if you want to believe that there's jobs. And I believe that there are jobs in our future. I think that Northern New York has all of the assets. We've got micro-hydro facilities. We've got excellent incubators like the one that SUNY Canton is starting up and the Small Business Development Center that's working here for entrepreneurship. I want to see my friends, I want to eventually see my kids stay in the North Country so they're not raising grandkids down in North Carolina, Florida, or Arizona. So you need to elect people that are pro-business.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. Ms. Jenne.
Sure. I was raised in a small business household, raised by 2 entrepreneurs. I know what it is. It's the life that I have lived. I work personally with the small businesses throughout this district to help them whether they're having difficulty with red tape, or they're trying to figure out a challenge that they're having in their community, whether it's providing opportunity for them to come and sell their products to people by hosting these large types of business and craft fairs. I work very closely with our small businesses to make sure they're a success, and many of them vouch for me on a regular basis because of the personal touch and the commitment I have to them. I am working with different sectors of our economy. I think that's how we should be focusing. We should be focusing on things like our maritime economy, our agriculture economy, and that the governor should get rid of his economic development councils and put them into programs that actually make a difference throughout upstate New York. His approach to building buildings may work in some communities, but it's not how you deal with underlying large economic systems. He needs to have people that understand it, or have people like us in our communities that understand it, drive where the investments go.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne.
You're welcome.
I will now get the audience questions. Just give me one moment. Thank you to everybody who submitted questions. This is great. First question will be for Ms. Jenne. As a soon-to-be college graduate, what do you plan to do to slow the exodus of young professionals?
Well, first I will let you know that there are tremendous job opportunities in this area, particularly for trained workers. There are jobs for chemists in Messina making pharmaceuticals. There are engineering positions that are open. There are high-tech positions all over this area. There is a need for social services representatives and social workers. There's a tremendous need for nurses. I would suggest that if you're a college graduate, that you reach out to the people in your community that work at these organizations. If you haven't done an internship, you probably should. But you know, there are opportunities here, not just for those that live here, but those that want to come back. You know, just come and talk to me. I meet one-on-one with students all the time. I met with a college student today. Health careers are high in demand. Tech jobs are in demand. And jobs where you can actually go out and be skilled and make things are in demand here. If you can't find a job, then let me know, and I will put you in touch with multiple places that are looking for workers.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk, 1 minute.
Yeah, you got to give Albany credit sometimes because it's like they love us so much, they just want to squeeze us to death. If you feel that sometimes, and that's what the business owners feel. It's like, all right, you love our employees so much, you want to make sure that they have paid family leave and bereavement leave, and this will be their wage because a board just said so. You talk to business owners and they're frustrated with the red tape and the regulations in Albany. They don't exist in other states. You talk to business, I just was at a barbecue joint in St. Lawrence County that said I had to replace somebody that worked here with an electronic dishwasher because even though it was an expensive machine, it was going to cost me less to maintain this machine than it was that employee, and he didn't want to let anybody go. So, I mean, just last year, 275 new regulations proposed by New York State agencies. You elect somebody to the New York State Assembly, you need someone that's going to fight through that red tape and be a check on, honestly, that executive power, because the Department of Labor, the Department of Health, the Department of Environmental Conservation, name your alphabet soup agency in New York, they work for you.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. Related question for you. How do you plan to bring jobs to the poorest county in New York, St. Lawrence County?
That's just it. You gotta turn the tide. So in New York, we have the most abysmal business climate in the United States. It's embarrassing. How can you do it on an individual level? You can fight through those red tapes. You can be an advocate for those businesses. You can help them, like the ice cream shop that I just helped out in the city of Watertown, who actually had problems with the city of Watertown planning and engineering, and also with New York State. So you can be an advocate and help them figure out this bureaucracy, but at the same time, you need a representative that's down there in Albany that is talking to business owners consistently, understands their needs, listens to them every day. A huge part of this job, and I learned this under Senator Ritchie, a huge part of this job is listening. And listening to business owners is going to be critically important if you want somebody to grow the economy in northern New York. Like I said, we've got all the sauce we need to make some great pasta up here. We've got everything we need to see businesses grow and thrive in northern New York. I'm tired of watching the out-migration. And honestly, I don't think it's the weather. That's probably not why people are leaving. Yeah, maybe the governor's right. Maybe it's the climate, but it's not the weather. It's the business climate that we've created. And it's the business climate that Albany's created. So I want to fight that, and I want to fight for small businesses in northern New York so that those entrepreneurs that are graduating from our incubators, from going through our small business development centers here in Canton, that they have an opportunity after graduation for a good paying job.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. Ms. Jenne.
Sure. Throughout the questioning tonight, I've talked about the work that I'm doing to grow our economy in different sectors here and the solutions that I'm proposing. But my opponent has provided you no solutions. He's talked about his 10 years working in government and being an elected official, and all he can come up with is one ice cream shop that I'm not sure you've solved the state problem yet, because she still had it the other day when I went to talk to her. He has a tired approach. He is an Albany politician. That is what he has done. He has been a career politician based out of Albany. He is coming here with the same tired talking points that have been used for years and years and years. He is not new blood. He is the same old that this region has had in other districts throughout the North Country that hasn't been getting it done. I've been bringing money and investments to this area, supporting our schools, supporting our colleges, giving kids the opportunity that I had to get a good education and to come back here and raise our families. I am the epitome of what needs to happen. Get results for the North Country and raise your family here like I am.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. I'm going to ask one more question. I'll give each of you 1 minute to answer, and then I'll give our panelists an opportunity to ask one last question of each of you having a minute to answer. So the last question from the audience, what is your position on the rooftop highway? I'll start with Ms. Jenne.
Sure. I think we need to address our transportation struggles here in the North Country. I believe that we need to move forward with a bypass around Canton and Potsdam so that we can get traffic that needs to get through here past the area and relieve the congestion that oftentimes causes a lot of accidents here between these two communities. I believe that it would also provide an opportunity for growth, more growth in that corridor if we solve the excess traffic. And by solving the Canton-Potsdam issue, I think that will lay the foundation for the rest of a 4-lane highway to be built through the North Country. Whether it is commerce or getting kids to school or getting to jobs, transportation is always our Achilles heel here. I will work to make sure, like I have, that our roads and our bridges are getting the attention they need. But we need to go above and beyond just replacing the things that need replacing. We need to start investing in a serious way in projects that will set us up for decades to come. And that is a good highway, 4-lane highway through the North Country.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk.
It's difficult to imagine it for us sometimes. I know it's been talked about for a long time in St. Lawrence County, but when your local municipality doesn't have enough of the Consolidated Highway Improvement Program funding, which is the funding line that your local town supervisor uses to fix his roads and fix the pothole on your street, at the same time, voting for a budget that has $4.85 billion in funding for the MTA for New York City, or voting for a new bridge that's named after the governor's father. We have plenty of money for that, but we can't fix the pothole on your street. So let's start there. Let's start getting our fair share back from Albany. I want to remind you, every time you go to the gas pump, you're putting 33 cents of that dollar is going into something called the Consolidated, into something called the Dedicated Bridge and Highway Trust Fund. And they've taken the dedication and the trust out of that fund, and that money is not coming back to us in northern New York. If it did, you wouldn't have the problems with bridges in St. Lawrence County, and there wouldn't be a pothole on your road.
Thank you. The more generation we put on, the more problems we're actually going to have locally, because we don't have a way to get a lot of our energy that's produced out of this area because transmission lines have not been upgraded throughout the state in a meaningful way. There is going to be battery technology that comes on board, hopefully in the next couple of years. It was just announced recently. right now is really unnecessary. In fact, I think what we should be doing is saying there's places that we shouldn't cite wind turbines. I have been the leading voice in the state legislature to protect Fort Drum and its training grounds from wind turbine interference. There is currently wind turbine interference, and additional siting of wind turbines around critical radar systems is only going to make that worse and undermine the ability of Fort Drum to actually complete its mission and have its soldiers trained safely. I think there are places in the North Country where wind turbines might be appropriate, but I think we are at a point right now in our state where we need leaders to stand up, like myself, and say there are areas where they should not be. There are lines that we should not cross. That's the leadership that I bring. I look at, I'm neutral on energy generation. I don't love or hate or want to prevent anything from happening, but we have to make smart decisions about our energy policy and balance that with other very important issues. I believe national security is an issue that should outweigh the generation at a specific site. And I will, when I get reelected to the New York State Assembly, I will once again put that forward and fight for our troops and their safety and our national security.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk, 2 minutes.
Yeah, Fort Drum's consistently said they want a seat at the table, and we certainly need to give them that. They've got flight patterns that they're concerned about. They haven't said no to wind, and I respect home rule, and I think it's really important. This is so, I mean, you say same old talking points, but the thing is, these are the things that I'm hearing from the community. So maybe it's time to start listening to those talking points in Albany. Because, so some communities might want some windmills, right? And those might also work for Fort Drum. You look at what's going on in Lewis County, and those communities are benefiting from them, and Fort Drum's okay with them. And Fort Drum hasn't said no to wind, period. So it's an excellent question, and I'm not saying no to wind, period. I'm saying, look, the communities that stand to benefit from that deserve a voice in this decision-making process, not Albany with an Article 10 telling you where they're going to put it, not Albany with a blanket bill that says no, not nowhere around here. Allow everyone a seat at the table, and it's time to start listening.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. I'm noticing we do have a few extra minutes left, so I'm going to allow 2-minute answers for each of the last 2 questions. Mr. Summerson.
Whose turn is it? I think it's Mr. Walczyk, right?
Sure.
Congress has failed to act on immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform. In the North Country, we know that dairy farmers rely on Mexican and Central American workers, many of whom are not here legally. This is a federal issue, but we do have a State Department of Labor. What do you think the state should do to help dairy farmers get adequate workers? And should they come from Latin America, or are there workers here in the North Country who do that job?
So what Mr. Summerstein, excellent question, and what Mr. Summerstein isn't telling you is that he's won the CAP award for journalism for agriculture, so I'm not surprised to hear him ask a good one on agriculture, and it is an excellent question. Some of this is going to have to happen on the federal level, unquestionably, but we need to continue to listen to dairy farmers, and what they're telling me is that they need this migrant labor, and they need that labor base. There aren't people in northern New York that want to do these jobs and don't want to do them at the wages that are going to make their farms sustainable. So we need to work with the feds and continue to advocate for our dairy farmers and the rest of the farms here in northern New York.
I don't think anyone will argue that immigration reform is long overdue, and our dairy industry is constantly caught between what they need and what is allowable. I don't like to see any industry put in that position, but I think that beyond the immigration reform, that has to happen at the federal level. One of the biggest things we can do is to stabilize our dairy industry. If the dairy industry had the ability to cover their cost of production and pay living wages and the same types of benefits that exist in other industries, because let's face it, dairy farming is increasingly an industry. There are still some small businesses out there, some small farms, traditional family farms, but many of these are really big operations. We need to address the systemic problem in the funding that our dairy farmers receive. Actually, it's not funding. It's the price that they get paid for the work they do every day. I think that at the state level, we should be focusing on solving that issue. We should be putting in place policies that help our farmers to stabilize their financial bottom line by creating a floor for the price that they receive for milk, by setting up incentives for them to self-balance the supply of milk with the demand of milk, set targets for them so that their exports are the first ones across the line into another country because of their high quality. There are ways to do this. I have been working on this. I have presented part of the solution. It can be tweaked, but it needs to become a priority. We wouldn't have these stories if farmers could afford to hire local help and have the working conditions be similar to other industries in this area. It is a very respected business to be in, and there are many people that would do it if they felt they could support their families on it.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. And for our final question, Mr. Benman.
Yeah, we saw at the federal level that important parts of NAFTA were recently renegotiated, and they have some benefits for the North Country, but there still are other parts of trade that are in flux, such as we still have the steel, the aluminum tariffs, which have a direct impact here, and there's also still talk of tariffs on cars. So at the state level, do you believe state representatives have any responsibility at all towards the North Country to manage or to boost trade with Canada, or do you feel this is strictly a federal issue as they negotiate NAFTA and steel tariffs and so on?
Sure, I think it's very important for us to maintain a strong relationship with Canada. They're our largest trading partner, and in this district there are 3 bridge crossings. It is essential that we send the message that New York feels that we are a friend of Canada, and that we welcome visitors and we welcome commerce, and we work to strengthen that partnership versus tear it down. However, I will admit that there have been some good things that have been done with this administration. I think maybe some people will be shocked that occasionally I do, send out a little praise. I'm a Democrat. I didn't vote for Mr. Trump. Neither did my opponent. But I do think that we did need to shake things up. Certainly, the aluminum workers in Messina have been struggling for years, and that is a key industry in our area. Protecting their smelting operations and having more people rely on the supply of materials that come out of there is very important. What I think we should do as a state is scrap the regional council process and use those dollars to be prepared to do what we need for critical sectors of our economy in this state. There is a shakeup going on, and no one can deny that. Now is the perfect time to move past the model that has been in place for 8 years and be prepared to ensure that the businesses that are here can weather this storm, can take advantage of the changes that benefit them, and also ensure the long-term stability of industries that will continue to suffer for years to come. It is how we should be doing economic development, and will continue to talk about that. I have been very forthright with the governor's representatives, Howard Zemsky, holding his feet to the fire on failed programs like Startup New York, and that the regional council process is not getting it done in the North Country. I will continue to do that. I think we should change our entire approach.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. Mr. Walczyk.
Yes, there's been an analogy that's brought to me a couple of times along the campaign trail. People point out the southern Riviera of Canada, and that's their front yard. And we're not building a fence in this one. This isn't our backyard. This is the front yard to America for Canada. So you think about the first impression. I know a lot of you talk to Canadians that come over the border and do business here, and they're perplexed. New York is a wealthy state with $160 billion budget each year. Why are the towns right on your border on the beautiful St. Lawrence River depressed? I think if there wasn't a red flag, I want to throw it for you again, because scrap the program, but find another place to spend the money. The thing is, it's your money. Albany fails at these economic development programs consistently. Startup New York, excellent point. Failed program, you've supported it consistently. New York State spends roughly $60 million a year on a movie and TV tax break. So, Madam Secretary, maybe an excellent show. You may love it. I find it pretty interesting. But it's $30 a pop for New Yorkers to support that program. How about keeping the money back in your pockets, keeping your taxes down, allowing businesses to grow in northern New York so that they can thrive? I'm not going to go to Albany and say, well, I found a better way to spend your money for you. That's not me. That's a key difference between us. But I will say, I find a better way to keep that money in your pocket, to fight Albany's addiction to spending so that you can grow the economy in northern New York, not Albany bureaucrats.
Thank you so much. Can we give a round of applause to our candidates for their contributions? You'll now each have the opportunity for a 2-minute closing statement. Mr. Walczyk, you may begin.
Thank you to the Watertown Daily Times, to Channel 7, to NCPR for the excellent questions. Thank you to all of you who came out this evening, and to everyone who's watching the live stream or watches it on Channel 7. Voter engagement is absolutely critical, and no matter how you came away from tonight, we do hope that you get out and vote on November 6th. It's critical to a representative democracy that we have your participation. You deserve to have a representative that listens to you in northern New York, and the best way to make them listen is to show up on November 6th. You've got some clear choices between my opponent and I. You've got business as usual in Albany over the last decade. You've got looking for opportunities for more revenue, and every time you hear that, I want you to think my taxes are going up. And you've got we find a way to spend it smarter. That's still your money, and I will be the first to tell you, you have a smarter way to spend your money than I do. We've got a choice on November 6th. I believe that I've decided to place roots and live my life up here because I love northern New York. And I think we've watched downtown Watertown, turn a corner. And we've done some great things that are pro-business in the city of Watertown. And we're watching our downtown start to thrive. And we've got other sparkles that are showing some hope for northern New York. And I want to see the entire region turn around. And I think we can do very well here. I hope you'll join me, and I hope that together we will fight for a brighter day for northern New York. You need an advocate that's ready to fight for you in Albany, and I want to be that guy. I honestly would be humbled to have your support, and I would be honored to represent you in the New York State Assembly. I'm Mark Walczyk, and I'm asking for your vote on November 6th.
Thank you, Mr. Walczyk. Ms. Jenne.
Thank you. You're all familiar with my deep roots in this community and my deep understanding of where we have been, and that informs me on where we need to go. I don't pretend that I'm somebody I'm not, but being North Country through and through means that I'm not just a member of the New York State Assembly. I am an excellent member of the New York State Assembly. I received a top-notch education here that set the stage for my success as an adult, and I want the next generation to have the same opportunity. I have real-life skills handed down from generations of my family and from helping out at home and working from a young age. I'm a hard worker, and I fight for what is right and ensure we get the respect that as hardworking North Country people deserve. I work for everyone in this district, whether it's a small business stuck in red tape or a young family struggling to pay the heat bills or a veteran needing health care. I am here in our communities personally, and you know me, and you know I'm here. I seek out advice on issues. I listen. I work with partners in local government and organizations to make things better. And I know when voices are quiet, it isn't always a good thing, like with our struggling dairy farmers. I'm still pretty young. I have a lot of passion. I have a lot of energy, and I have solutions. I'm the candidate that's proposed solutions here too. I also know that understanding our past and bringing the lessons learned before me to this work makes me more effective for our region. I am the candidate with the proven record of getting results for our communities, making sure our views and experiences are included in the debate. I am the counterbalance to cities and suburbs in the New York State Assembly majority and the legislature in general. This is more than a job for me. This is my life. This is your life. The only way we are going to turn things around in this area, this state, this country, is for people in places like the North Country to send people like me to fight against the odds and get the job done. Send me. I will fight every day for us. I ask for your vote on November 6th.
Thank you, Ms. Jenne. And thank everyone here. Thank you for your thoughtful questions. I would like to thank the SUNY Canton Information Services crew, particularly our sound technician. I would like to thank our faculty member, Dr. Fenner, and our staff member, Greg Kai, for thoughtfully looking at your questions. I would like to thank the facilities folks for this beautiful setup here tonight. I'd like to remind any students that are here that you can see Vice President Bish or RJ Thayer and have your IDs scanned for our newly established leadership co-curricular badge. And I would like to remind all of you to register to vote, get your friends and family and honestly perfect strangers registered to vote, because we all know that that's our responsibility, our right, and really our pleasure as U.S. citizens to be able to do that. I'd like to give one more thank you to our panelists for their excellent questions for our candidates tonight, Tom Grazer, David Summerstein, and Keith Benman. Of course, to our candidates, Mark Walczyk and Addie Jenne, for their thoughtful responses and for joining us here tonight. Thank you very much.